What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Nacho Wrestling, and in today's edition of the 10 Count, we are going to be taking a look into the future of professional wrestling, into the very far off distant lands of 2025. What? It's already December of 2024. Shit. Alright then. With that little joke aside, of course, we're going to see a lot of things on this list. From better long-term storytelling and Chad Gable winning the IC title, I have a lot of things that I think should happen in 2025. I don't necessarily think they're going to happen, but they're just things that I would like to see happen. And of course, as always, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to stay updated on all things Nacho Wrestling. And if this is your first time watching a Nacho Wrestling video, why don't you consider hitting the subscribe button? I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers, and your help would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, and let's get on with the 10 count. Number 10! Number 10 is, of course, that AEW needs to hire new writers and producers for matches. One thing that AEW was lacking in 2024 was consistency between their week-to-week booking on Dynamite and Collision respectively, and even Ring of Honor to a certain extent. Tony Khan has realized that he does need to hire writers, and he has gotten writers in a little sort of writer's room that he has in AEW. But at the end of the day, the pen stops at Tony Khan, and he has the final decision on what goes on a week-to-week basis. Not trying to say that AEW needs to be WWE Junior or WWE Light or anything like that, but just a little more structure and a little more give in what we give to the wrestlers for promos, because at the end of the day, AEW is about where the best wrestle, and if it is where the best wrestle, then of course they should be allowed to go out there and do mostly what they want in that ring, with a few exceptions of course. But when it comes to the promos and the segments between two wrestlers and the interviews with Tony Schiavone and Jim Ross or Excalibur or whoever, I think a major thing that could help the company is if they get some solid writers and producer teams together to help craft cohesive stories from a week-to-week basis. Number 9! Number 9 is, of course, that I would like to see more Willow Nightingale on my AEW product. I think a huge success for AEW in 2024 was not only the rise and popularity of Willow Nightingale, of course that started in late 2023, early 2024, but really hit its peak around, I would say, All In, All Out, when her and Chris Statlander were hitting the peak for their feud against each other. And that's another thing to mention, is their feud between each other for 2024 could arguably be one of the feuds of the year for AEW if it wasn't for that weird face turn that Chris Statlander had right after finishing the feud. I do think that Willow Nightingale has a World Heavyweight Championship in her future, whether it's in 2025 or later down the line in 26 or 27, not too sure. But it would be awesome to see her win the World Heavyweight Championship and rekindle her feud with Chris Statlander, or more likely rekindle her feud with Mercedes Moné. Number 8! I mentioned this one at the top of the video, but better long-term storytelling not only for AEW, but for WWE as well. Before you get on my case about this, WWE does do long-term storytelling, and they do it perfectly. Everything is cinema. Everything is amazing. Look at the Bloodline saga. Look at Drew and Seth. Look at CM Punk and Seth. Look at all three of those guys. Blah, 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 blah. I get it. But there are some instances where they could fix their long-term storytelling. More on that in a second. AEW's idea of long-term storytelling is just as lazy. Maybe a little lazier. They use their relationships with companies like New Japan and CMLL and expect fans to completely understand what happened in New Japan or CMLL. And the biggest criticism I have is their use of the Ring of Honor name and brand. They expect everybody who is a fan of AEW just to automatically understand that Ring of Honor was sort of the AEW before AEW. So rather than having Excalibur force feed information during a person's entrance, maybe try to build up some of your own stories internally, like how the Hangman and Kenny feud worked out perfectly for them, or the Bryan Danielson and Hangman feud worked out for them, or the Hangman and Swerve feud that worked out for them. I'm noticing a pattern here. Moving over to WWE for a quick second and their long-term storytelling, of course they do have great examples of long-term storytelling. Of course there's the Bloodline saga, which has been going on for 5 years now. They also have the sort of long-term story of Cody Rhodes winning the World Heavyweight Championship, which I guess could be tied into the Bloodline saga technically, but I like to think that it's its own little spin-off of the Bloodline story, because yes, it involves members of the Bloodline, but in reality, our main protagonist is Cody Rhodes, and it's a Cody Rhodes story. Of course, there are bad examples in WWE of long-term storytelling. There's whatever they've been doing with Gunther, and his sort of crisis of confidence that came way too early in his championship run. It should have happened maybe 8-10 months down the line when everyone's starting to catch up to him and everyone's starting to give him a run for his money. That's when the crisis of confidence should have happened, not after losing to the guy that beat Roman Reigns, the literal God mode wrestler, the literal tribal chief, the literal big dog, I do think that one thing that we do have to remember about WWE's long-term storytelling is that it can be hit or miss. You look at what they did with Chad Gable and Otis and how they never really capitalized on the heat that feud had, and now they're just finally getting back around to it and expecting everyone to feel just as invested in it as they did back in the summertime. It's just illogical booking. It's not going to work. Another big example, and this is the real kicker, this is the main reason better long-term storytelling for both companies is on here, really, is whatever the hell Paul Triple H Levesque, the Game, Cerebral Assassin, Terrorizing, whatever you know him as, he has that Judgment Day story, and it's been going on for quite some time, and I think a lot of us are tired of it. I'll be personally honest. Get that shit off my fucking screen. I'm tired of it. Sorry about that. I'm just very passionate about the Judgment Day story and where it could eventually go or not go, or hopefully peter out. A lot of people are tired of Rhea versus Liv, myself included. A lot of people are tired of Finn versus Damian, myself included. A lot of people are tired of the Judgment Day in general. And yeah, there's not really much else for them to do. I think it's time for them to wrap it up. End it before the year is over somehow. You know, you gotta... I figure it's gonna happen at the January 6th Raw on Netflix, which every time I say January 6th Raw, gosh, WWE is really good at booking their dates, aren't they? Speaking of WWE, number... 7. More wrestling on WWE PLEs. This one's plain and simple. There's way too much ad reads for either the city that they're in, because the city now pays WWE a lot of money to hold their events, which I still find to be pretty shallow and stupid, because, like, not every city that pays for it is going to have a good crowd. You know, I mean, yeah, sure, there are the exceptions when, like, Paris, France, or wherever they were for Backlash. Was it Paris? Can't remember. It was France. Or when they were in Germany for Bash at Berlin, or when they were in Puerto Rico for Backlash. These were great crowds, don't get me wrong. It's the US cities. It's the WrestleManias and SummerSlams. It's like, man, you should really try to go where the crowds are going to be the best. Mania 40 in Philly was a good idea, though. That crowd was good. I'm mainly talking about, like, SummerSlam in Cleveland and SummerSlam. I still find, like, SummerSlam in Minnesota is going to be weird. I hope not too many Brock Lesnar fans are there, because out of our company. I think I've exhausted my point on this a little too long, but you get the gist of it. Add even 3 minutes to each match on a 5 to 6 pay-per-view card for WWE. Sorry, PLE card. And then you would have about 15 to 20 more minutes of wrestling, and that's perfect. Because you should try to split it at least in half. Like, why did Saturday night's main event only have 52 minutes of wrestling? 52 minutes? It was a 2-hour show. Not even half was wrestling? And like, I know what you're gonna say. Oh, 8 minutes isn't that far off. You could just round up. No, you can't. 8 minutes is pretty long. 2-3 more minutes each match. And I think a lot of people would be happy because you can also accomplish a lot in a wrestling match in 2 to 3 minutes. Like, you can get a good sequence in, a good finishing sequence, a good mid sequence. Not mid as in like trash, mid as in like middle of the match sequence. Just want to make that clear. Number 6. This is one of the ones that I mentioned at the top of the video, and this is a singles title for Chad Gable in 2025. Simply, we lost the plot on what Chad Gable should be doing on the WWE roster. He signed that big fat re-extension with them and was kind of given nothing for it. You know, normally a wrestler, when they re-sign with a company, is rewarded and given at least somewhat of a push. Man, he got chumped out of his spot at WrestleMania by Sami Zayn, dog. What are you talking about? That was bullshit. And don't even get me started on what I mentioned earlier with how they never capitalized on a match between him and Otis, and now they're just finally getting back around to it. Brother, nobody wants to see that right now. We want to see Chad Gable put in some work. Move him over to SmackDown, have him hoop with Andrade, Carmelo, Santos, Shinsuke, LA Knight, I guess. Sorry, I try to keep a straight face for that one. It's funny because LA Knight like is in there with some stacked wrestlers, just some great in-ring guys, and he's not the best in the ring. But that's not what this is about. This is about singles title for Chad Gable, whether that's the U.S. title, Intercontinental title, or maybe the world title. Who knows? Probably not gonna happen. It would be cool, but it's definitely not gonna happen. Just don't have him go and win the tag titles with one of the Creed brothers. That would be dumb. Especially because neither of the Creed brothers work as a singles guy. Number 5. Number 5 is, of course, making tag team wrestling great again. I myself am a huge fan of tag team wrestling. I've loved it ever since I started watching professional wrestling. Tag teams are just so interesting. The idea of chemistry and seamlessly flowing between two guys and making sure that you cut the ring in half and you keep them on your side of the ring so you can do frequent tags. There's just a lot more psychology in tag wrestling, but nevertheless, tag team wrestling is finally on the come up at the end of this year for both AEW and WWE. Especially over in AEW, they finally realized that, oh my god, there are other tag teams besides the Young Bucks and FTR. So they decided, let's give the tag titles to Private Party. Which, I know I just said that in a sort of sarcastic tone, but I absolutely love Private Party, and I'm very glad they won the tag titles. I think they're doing great stuff right now, and I can't wait to see what they do in 2025. I hope their reign is a long one. I hope they don't drop them anytime soon, and I pray to the good Lord that if they do drop these belts, they drop them to the grizzled young veterans. As for WWE's tag team division, it's a little rockier than AEW's. They did recently, well, not recently, but they did at WrestleMania finally split the tag titles again for what seems like the 20th time between Raw and SmackDown. And the Judgment Day had the Raw ones for the longest time without defending them really at all. And over on SmackDown, they were sort of hot potatoed a little bit. Grayson Waller and Austin Theory had them for a minute, and then they dropped them to DIY, I believe, who then dropped them to the Bloodline, who then lost them in a ladder match to Motor City Machine Guns, who then lost them back to DIY. So, bit of a interesting hop, skip, and a jump for the SmackDown tag titles. And that honestly, that makes it interesting. I know a lot of people were upset when Motor City Machine Guns tag title reign ended later or shorter than it did. But they're gonna win them back again. They're Motor City Machine Guns. Triple H knows what he's got with those two guys. They're literally the blueprint for tag team wrestling today. So yeah, they'll be fine. And as for DIY, they'll be fine. They're on their second reign, and we thought we were going to have a Ciampa Gargano feud again, which, you know, if you haven't seen my Ciampa Gargano video and why it's so important to their legacy and their ongoing history as they continue to grow within their wrestling career, you should check it out. Number 4! I want AEW to run more fun venues than what they have already announced. Of course, they're running Hammerstein Ballroom here at the end of 2024, and as of recording this video, they did just have Hammerstein Ballroom Final Battle, which was an absolutely weird fucking show to watch, but Athena still winning the belt was cool. Sorry for spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Final Battle. Sorry. Chris Jericho retaining against Matt Cardona was a very interesting decision, but they're trying to get a TV deal apparently for Ring of Honor. So if you want to, I guess, you know, put Chris Jericho as your backbone to get that TV deal, sure. He doesn't really draw like he used to, but sure, go ahead, I guess. But imagine AEW running in venues like Mall of America, or if AEW even went to their original ECW arena. They obviously couldn't say that they're in the original ECW arena because WWE owns the trademarks and name rights to ECW, so they could just say that they're in the historic Arena 2300, I think that's what it's called. They could do a tour of all these famous historic battlegrounds of wrestling's past. Imagine they go to the Warner Media Lot the way WCW used to be on the Disney Media Lot. More fun venues for AEW. That little amphitheater place they had for Dynamite recently was great. The Hammerstein Ballroom show should be great. Yeah, more fun venues. Plain and simple, more fun venues. Number 3. I want to see CM Punk win the World Heavyweight Championship. You see this smile on my face? You see this? This is a man who's about to eat crow. I want to talk right down to earth. To you, Phil, CM Punk Brooks, in a language that everyone can understand. I'm sorry, big guy. I don't know why I was ever mad at you. You know, I really don't. I get it. You know, I'm a huge AEW nut. I love AEW. I love WWE. I love wrestling. And so when you came back to AEW, I was like, yes, thank God. It's not the WWE. He's got freedom to do what he wants. With all that being said, it would really be awesome to see Phil win the World Heavyweight Championship, either on the lead up to WrestleMania 41, or ideally him versus Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship at Mania 41, main eventing night 1. But time out, more on that in a second, brudda. Having CM Punk win the World Heavyweight Championship would be an amazing thing to happen for the company. He's honestly their hottest guy right now. He's the most over guy on the roster. He sells the most merch, I believe. He does all this stuff. He's their plus delta. Shout out to Going in Raw for exposing me to the term plus delta. Whatever that means, not sure. But he brings in good numbers for them. He's got feuds on feuds on feuds lined up for the next couple of years. You know, him and Drew McIntyre could revisit their feud. Him and Seth Rollins can feud for endless amounts of time. And then he's got the whole thing with the Bloodline and Paul Heyman. How does he work into that? Him and Roman eventually. Him and Solo eventually. Him and Jacob Fatu eventually, which, I'll be honest, Phil will probably shatter like dust if he gets in the ring with Jacob Fatu. But I'll be okay, because it's Jacob Fatu. I love you, Solo! Number 2. I put this one at number 2 because it really just works out and it makes sense with this opening sentence. The women should at least get to main event night 1 of WrestleMania. If there are 2 nights of WrestleMania, and there are 2 Royal Rumble winners, shouldn't each Royal Rumble winner get to main event a night of WrestleMania? Right? Now I get it, Roman Reigns, of course, is here, and he's going to main event night 2 of WrestleMania, whether he wins the Royal Rumble or not. When it comes to this whole, you know, Oh, well, they won the Royal Rumble, they'll main event WrestleMania in the mid-card. How does that fucking work? That doesn't make any sense. And to have the likes of women like Rhea Ripley, Charlotte, Asuka, Tiffany Stratton, Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair, you know, the list goes on. To have all these amazing women on your roster, some outshine the men in certain areas like merch selling, crowd reaction, match quality. And they don't get a shot to main event WrestleMania? It's idiotic. For number 1, as I always do on the 10 count, I bring in the drum set. Number 1, drum roll please. Stop shitting on each other and focus on your damn selves. At the end of the day, both companies had good and bads in 2024. As any major company, either in sports or just in the business world, do, there are pros and cons to every year. And I could go on a full list of pros and cons for AEW and a pros and cons list for WWE, but I don't want to do that, because one would obviously have a little more cons than the other. No pun intended, but that's just not fair. Because at the end of the day, both companies are attracting different target audiences. AEW, of course, is going after those sickos, those diehard grappling wrestling fans. You know, the ones who really want to see some proper in-ring technicians, some proper high flying, and just beautiful sequences of moves. That's what they want. They don't want the story stuff. And that's fine, because you can enjoy that stuff. There's aspects of that to enjoy. If you don't like that and you want the more story-based saga approach with melodramatic soap opera-ness, you have the WWE. It's right there for you. It's not like it's not available. And if you like a mix and a mesh of both of them, then just watch both of them. And get your fix of grappling and the real, authentic grittiness of professional wrestling from AEW. And then get your sports entertainment from WWE. And of course, I'm more or less talking about the fans in the IWC. There's no need to mudsling and throw death threats or, you know, threats of hate and vitriol at each other. Because it's like Brian Zane always says, like what you like, don't be a dick. Because we all have what we like and we just want to share it with one another, and there's a space for everybody. It's the problem when everyone encroaches on each other. Like, just leave it alone, man. It's fucking wrestling. The bunch of fucking dudes hopped up on trembolone sandwiches fighting each other. Like, come on, get out of here. And they're not even really fighting each other. It's predetermined. They go out there knowing who's gonna go over. Most of the time they do, brother. That's it for today's edition of the 10 Count. Let me know what you guys thought about it down in the comments below. What do you guys want to see in 2025? And what do you guys not want to see in 2025? Like I said, let me know down in the comments below. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to stay up to date on all things Nacho Wrestling. Like I said at the top of the video, if this is your first time watching a Nacho Wrestling video and you've made it all the way to the end, I think you should really hit the subscribe button. It would really be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys, and I will see you guys next time.